Welcome back. Well, we have a couple guests from the Orange County Fire Authority today. One you obviously know, Captain Steve Concialdi, Public Information Officer. Nice to see you again, Steve.
Thank you, Ken.
And we have firefighter Jeff Sheldon, also a paramedic. I think you've been on before, haven't you?
Yes, I have.
Yes,
nice
it's
to be
good
back.
to see
Thank
you again. We're going to talk about a few different things here, and one of them, while we've been very lucky this year as far as red flag warnings and the Santa Ana wind fire season, it's still upon us. Quite often now we have seen winds come up all the way through January, sometimes in February, although the main season is usually the fall. But Jeff, I know you're somewhat of a specialist in this as far as fire behavior, right?
That's correct. My specialty, in addition to being a firefighter paramedic with the authority, is a fire behavior specialist. And so I look at the ingredients that go into fire behavior, fuels, weather, and topography, and I determine the speed and intensity of a wildfire with the different tools that I have.
Yeah, it's quite a science, isn't it?
Yeah, a little bit of art, a little bit of science, but you never surrender your judgment, what they say, to the box, to the computer.
Yeah.
You use both of the tools equally.
Yeah, definitely. And Steve, we've seen this before where when there's not a lot of wind, quite recently there was a house fire in Silverado, up in Silverado Canyon, and as you said, it started going up the hillside. There was no wind that day. Had there been wind, it's a whole different scenario, isn't it?
Right, it would have gone out of the canyon. That's what the incident commander thought.
Yeah.
But we're not just concerned about wildfires, we're concerned about house fires, especially when we have these wind events. Because if a house catches on fire, you have embers coming from the house, and then those quickly can be spread into the vegetation, and it could start a major fire which threatens homes and can burn homes. So that's why we want to make sure you're careful inside as well as outside. And even though it's the end of November into December, there's the threat still exists.
Absolutely. Yeah. If you look at our statistics, and we can look at the fire occurrence data, when our fires occur, and we can correlate those with certain weather conditions to tell us when our season's going to slow and when our season's going to end. And we have not had a season-ending event yet, and so we are still in fire season, and our fuels are very vulnerable at this point, especially under the effect of dry weather and windy weather.
Yeah.
The one thing we do have going for us at this point is the days are getting shorter.
Right.
So that window of true explosive growth on a day-to-day basis is getting narrower and narrower.
But we saw, certainly up in Northern California this year, the horrendous fires up there in the area of Napa Valley, and that one spread just, in a matter of hours. It was just incredible. Now, that is more of a rural area up there. I would say that town, I forget the name of the town.
Lakeport.
Yeah.
And I was on both of those fires as the fire behavior specialist assigned to the management team on the Rocky Fire and the Jerusalem Fire, which were the first two in that area. And then later I went up on the Valley Fire as on the helicopter right there.
There we go.
As a paramedic rescuer on our helicopter. But the growth that we would see on a day-to-day basis without the effect of wind was really humbling to see fire move like that.
Yeah.
And that just owes to the 4-year drought that we've been in right now, that our fuels are so stressed that there's so much dead material mixed in with any live material that we have right now. And so you may have a little bit of green grass, and we've had some green grass come up with the rains that we had in September.
Yeah.
But that grass has now grown, set seed, and completely cured out because we've had the warm weather since that rain period. So now we just have more energy sitting there on the ground.
And you said those fires happened, there wasn't a lot of wind.
Not a lot of wind at all.
Right.
Just purely fuels and topography driven.
Yeah, and I kind of know that area, and it's very much for people who don't know that area, just north of the Napa area. It would be akin to almost Silverado and those type areas. That little town was like 1 square mile, I think, as far as the town center.
Yeah, Middleton, yes.
Yeah, Middleton, and where they have all, the homes might have a couple acres around them, horse property up in the hills, and you can see how quickly it spreads. And I know you've talked about, I think in this village they don't have to worry about clearing brush too much. As far as the outlining areas, they certainly do. But where they reach Laguna Canyon. But there's also being prepared, and it's called the Ready, Set, Go, right?
Well, but Terry Merritt, she has this area for Laguna Woods, and she's working very close with the board and the landscapers in here with an ongoing, it's going to be a few months plan. So basically they're trying to thin out the vegetation and reduce the vegetation around the community, because the threat exists everywhere. Where you have natural vegetation, you have homes, if a fire gets established in there, it could threaten the homes. Or a fire starts again in the home, it's a threat to the vegetation around there. So they're doing the best they can, and Orange County Fire is just asking the residents, be patient. Because of the rain, there's been some delays, and it talks about here that they're trying to do the best to protect the community, but this process will take several weeks, possibly months, depending on the weather. Yeah,
and I know that the community itself has been working with you folks, and obviously the cities. One of the things too is that you've talked about with the Ready, Set, Go program is being prepared as best as you can in case you do need to leave. And part of that is even within your home being organized, right?
Right. If you're prepared for a fire, you're prepared for any natural disaster, earthquake, flooding situations where you have to go quickly. And we want to make sure that you have an area where you know where your medications are, your prescription glasses, your computer, and a lot of times you just need to take the hard drive. You don't need to take the screen and so forth, but just take what's important, your important papers, your photos. Those are family heirlooms and stuff that you have. You don't want to lose those in case of a fire. So know exactly what you're going to take, have some cash with you at all times too. And then if there is a fire, we want you to stay out of the area. That smoke is so toxic.
Yeah, it is.
It's bad for us to breathe, but there are other people that have respiratory conditions, and when you start breathing that smoke, it exacerbates that. So
it certainly does. Speaking of, El Nino, and I know that is a great concern to a lot of areas, even in this area. Although they've mitigated some flooding issues that they've had here just recently, there has been floods in this community before. And I know you folks are quite worried about places like Laguna Canyon and up there in Majeska and Silverado areas as well, because those areas, I know in Silverado you had that 1,000-acre fire months ago, but that becomes almost a flashpoint for floods, right?
Right, and you work up there.
Yeah, I work in Silverado, and part of the problem with the fire coming through there, it takes away the vegetation, which holds everything in place. The slopes are very steep in that area, and in addition to not having the vegetation to hold the soil in place, there's a lot of rocks as well. And so the debris flow issue is legitimate when we have conditions where the soil becomes saturated after repetitive soakings. And that is what El Nino does, is it gives us more consecutive storms. It may not give us more intense weather storms in and of themselves, but because we are going to be in the storm track as they're forecasting, we're going to get more consecutive storms. So the soil is going to become saturated, and once it becomes saturated, that water has to go somewhere. And it comes out, and then it flows.
So that's something you help predict as well, right?
Correct.
Just like the wildfires.
Right. It's because weather is part of the component for wildfires, and weather in an El Nino situation is the same thing.
So people have to keep mindful of that if they live in those kinds of areas, right?
Absolutely. And we're also looking at things like the fact that maybe the last time we had an El Nino in '97, and we had significant rain and flooding, people have a memory of what flooded. Well, we've had a lot of development in Orange County and in Laguna, and the places that were flooding before may not flood now, but there may be new areas that are going to be diverting water that did not experience flooding before, that you're going to have to look out for.
Right. Out by where you live in Dove Canyon, just a few years ago when we had those storms, it flooded some handful of homes up to the middle of the stairs. So I was actually working at the time in Station 45 in Santa Margarita, and we were pulled into Lake Forest because we had flooding along Lake Forest Road where cars were stuck because the cell had gone through Saddleback Valley. Well, we spent hours there, and then as we headed back towards Rancho Santa Margarita, we had the storm in Dove Canyon, and it was coming down off those hills, and then the storm drains were getting just clogged with debris from vegetation, from rocks and so forth, and it started backing up. And the rain and the water just quickly just rose up into the house. I mean, when it gets up to 5 feet tall inside a house, and there's people that are stuck on their stairs and they need to get out, and it was that quick.
Yeah. Well, being prepared is the key, and I think part of it when it comes to El Nino, that listen to what the authorities have to say, and if you are driving around and you see standing water, you see that water on the street, don't think that you can just go through it, even if you have a four-wheel drive vehicle. Don't go around.
In swiftwater rescue, if we have to do a swiftwater rescue, we have some principles that we live by. Is that water is predictable. We know which way it's going. It's going to go downhill.
Yeah.
But it's also very powerful. It's deceptively powerful.
It is, yes.
And it's also very persistent. It's not like when you go to the beach and a wave hits you and then it's going to stop. It is persistent and will keep coming and coming and coming. Often the water will continue to rise even after the rain has stopped, because that water is still coming off. So just because it's not raining doesn't mean you're out of danger at that point.
Yeah.
And so you need to really be mindful of those things. Do not take it for granted. Even 6 inches of water will sweep the average person right off their feet. And then once you're moving, that inertia is very hard to overcome.
And again, don't ever drive your car through a flooded street. Most of the time it will disable the car, and then you're stuck.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we're coming up on the holiday season, of course, and I know you have your 6-week safety countdown here. We've talked about this before. You have, of course, the smoke alarm, and what's important about these is that if you haven't checked your battery, like you should have, they all have a little button on here that you can check things on, or you can do what I do, and I've replaced mine with the 10-year.
Right, this is the 10-year one.
Yeah,
you don't
so I
have
to worry about it.
Right.
And it's great. Also, we just had Thanksgiving, but a lot of cooking happens this time. Basic safety in the kitchen, right?
Right. On Thanksgiving Day, we had 13 fires. That basically, this is where somebody's calling 911, and you have 20 to 25 firefighters driving code 3, and it was throughout all of Orange County.
Yeah,
at 13, because that's in last year for the whole month of November, we had about 19 fires. We had 13 on Thanksgiving Day.
That's amazing. Wow. It's almost as if people don't cook except that day and don't know what they're doing or whatever it might be. We're just about out of time. I think this is wonderful information that both of you bring. And it's you can go on the website, OCFA.org. And is there a separate one for the Ready, Set, Go? They can get to it from there.
Yeah, they could get to it from there.
Okay, so that's easy. Get that information, and it's, get yourself ready. You never know when something's going to happen. And as you said, Jeff, if you're prepared for a fire, whether it's a wildfire, a house fire, whatever it might be, you're prepared for any disaster. And just keep tabs on your stuff and ready to go the things that are most important to you. Thanks, gentlemen. It's always good to see you, Steve. Jeff, good to see you again.
Nice to see you again, too.
Hope to see you on here again.
Absolutely.
And hopefully it's not a busy season for you.
Okay.
Okay? All right. That's what we want for both of you. All right. We'll be right back.